brooding, atmospheric, sometimes blissful, and ultimately a first-person shooter campaign that caters to those with a more refined palate for the genre. I'm Alex, and I just came off of playing through Metro Exodus and will be giving my raw evaluation and reconsideration of how the game holds up now. This is the enhanced edition of the game on PC, which now has lovely ray tracing, which launched not too long ago right before it made its way to PS5 and Xbox Series XS. I did play the previous two Metro games, 2033 and Last Light, and the first hour of Exodus when it launched back in 2019, but I got sidetracked with covering other games at the time. Since then, Metro Exodus has been cleaned up, polished up, and has 2 DLC expansions now. This all made this the perfect time to give it another fair shot, and I'm sure glad I did, because upon completion, it just might now be my new favorite single-player shooter campaign of the last decade, right alongside Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Although the first 2 Metro games were pretty good, Metro Exodus feels like the Witcher 3 of the trilogy, not just knocking the 3rd game out of the park, but completely demolishing the park to build a colossal coliseum instead. You can really tell the dev team truly leveled up and perfected their craft on this 3rd outing. Outside of the highly linear first hour introduction, Exodus breaks out of that mostly straightforward structure of the first 2 games and opens up into a few big semi-open world style areas. There is the frigid wasteland you have come to expect, the Mad Max-esque desert area, personally my favorite section of the game, a lush forest area filled with dangerous predators, and a highly radioactive cityscape, along with the 2 new sections in the DLC expansions. While in these more open areas, you have your primary mission of course, but there are also side areas to go explore which are almost always worth seeking out. What makes side content worth doing is meaningful rewards, and Exodus also does this quite well. You will sometimes find tucked away in an easily missable section of the map an important gear upgrade you could not have gotten elsewhere, or some kind of special gun attachment you hadn't quite stumbled upon just yet. It feels great when your curiosity is regularly rewarded with exclusive upgrades such as this, or at the very least your exploration usually leads to some kind of memorable moment. Memorable moments also ties into atmosphere, which is something the series has always done excellently. But before me just talking about it, take a quick look and listen at just how engrossing some of these areas can be. Of course, the graphic fidelity, animation, and sound design all working together is the main element in nailing the atmosphere, but Metro gets bonus points for those extra nuanced details that it puts into its gameplay. Your mask might need a good old wiping off or patching up from time to time, weird bugs will crawl right along your arm, your light needs to be hand charged every so often along with some pneumatic guns, along with all your weapons getting gunk and grime all up in them, which will lead to poor operation if left uncleaned. All of these work in tandem to make Metro feel that much more tangible and somewhat real, even though you're battling crazy giant mutated bear beasts with Molotovs and double-barrel shotguns. Since we're already on the subject of weapons, the gun modding system in Exodus is also done very well. You'll be stripping almost all the guns you find out in the wild for parts to slowly amass a wide variety of things you can slap onto those guns. Some of these will provide simple stat increases, but others can really change up how the weapons operate. Also, if you're not at a workbench, you can still use your backpack to change up what you have equipped on your current gun, which can be used to adapt to the situation at hand. Metro Exodus has a fairly large focus on stealth, but just as much of a focus on action as well, and it ultimately comes down to if you can play well enough to go guns blazing, because enemies do hit quite hard if they spot you. I played through on the hardcore difficulty, but there is one higher than that removes the HUD elements and makes resources even more scarce. For me on hardcore, the regular careful juggling of ammo, healing, and mask filters felt optimally balanced just right without dipping radioactive toes into the realms of artificial difficulty. In other words, I recommend starting there and leaving hardcore ranger mode for that more skillful second playthrough. During combat in Exodus, I found the non-human creatures to be the most entertaining to fight, and their AI can do some pretty interesting things from time to time. For example, I came across this pack of fast little mutant cat-like things for the very first time, so naturally I skip right to plugging one right in the face for science. This seemed to spook the entire group, which all ran off into hiding as I continued forward feeling like a big man. As soon as I let my guard down thinking I was in the clear, all of a sudden that entire pack creeps up behind me in a frenzy, leading to me panically sprinting to find an elevated position. There are many cool little moments like that, and even with the human enemies, they have their dynamics as well. In a human settlement or outpost, if you're enough of a madman slaughtering the entire place, sometimes the remaining enemies will just be like, you know what dude, you got this, I give up. More games need mechanics like this because it puts a weight and impact to your violence that is usually lost in most other action games where every enemy seems numb to the carnage. Now shifting over to something that is more of a bonus to me if it's good, easily avoidable if it never earns it, a game's story. In Metro Exodus, just like the name describes, it's all about you and a few allies leaving the confines of the metro station and exploring the vast unknowns of the rest of the region. You are a silent protagonist, which you may or may not like, but that allows for the supporting cast to take most of the spotlight, which works well here. As you journey across the country, you'll slowly start to feel a camaraderie with your ragtag group and a comfort to seeing the locomotive that you all travel in. Tonally, think the exact opposite of the Borderlands series, which kind of assumes you're a goofy idiot, because Metro Exodus respects your intelligence and provides a smart, down-to-earth shooter more skewed for adult gamers. The journey gives you plenty of super serious moments, heart-wrenching interactions, slow somber sections, and some peaceful moments that are just there to let you absorb living in the world of Metro.
Этот поезд в огне, нам некуда больше бежать. Эта земля была нашей, пока мы не увязли в борьбе.
As for the DLC expansions, the first called The Two Colonels is set in the recent past, showing the inner workings and downfall of a settlement you explore towards the end of the main campaign. This gives you a new flamethrower weapon and is somewhat more focused on straightforward charred action. You also spend a decent amount of time seeing how the different faction lives, which does eventually add some nice extra backstory to some of the main campaign's cast. The other expansion is called Sam's Story, which takes place soon after where the main story ends. This new area is far less linear than the previous expansion, providing what is equivalent to another semi-open world area on par with the others in the main campaign. The story feels a bit more standalone in this one, but overall this expansion does a better job at equally mixing exploration and action with a few memorable set-piece moments throughout. And with that, I think that wraps up everything I wanted to talk about today in regards to one of my newfound favorite shooters, Metro Exodus. If you played it back at launch, let me know your thoughts on how it was back then, or if you picked up the Enhanced Edition now in 2021, let me know if you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you happen to like the style of this breakdown, I recommend the channel Boomstick Gaming, which is run by some guy who just really loves a wide array of well-crafted video games. As always, this has been Alex, thanks for hearing out my opinion on this, and have a good rest of your day. I almost forgot, I made a side channel called Boomstick Micro, which is short form videos, go check that out as well if you like kinda dumber content.